Is this live, anybody? Looks like it's still spinning in. Good morning, everyone. I assume that this is working, and it's been working for about 5 seconds, and I didn't know. Hey, hi there. It's Palm Sunday, Passion Sunday. Welcome, who's ever here. And I want to give you a little bit of housekeeping first. First is I'm housekeeping this weekend, which is why I'm dressed the way I am, because I've got some reconstruction that I'm doing at the house this weekend, and that's why I'm dressed the way I am. And some people have been asking about the glass art over here that's behind me. All of that is done by Wendy and Harry Bissett well, with the exception of one piece. The rest of the vases are all done by Harry and Wendy Bissett from Vermont Glassworks up in the Northeast Kingdom. And so is this glass. Harry and Wendy have been giving me glass for decades. I'm super appreciative. It's been very wonderful to accept their gifts, and I continue to thank them for it. So the windows were open all last night in my studio, so it's been cold in here. I got the stove going. I got my little gloves on, and I'll be moving things around on my desktop today. I've got a little setup for this morning's talk, and I see Wendy's here. I thought I saw Wendy pop in. Please give a comment if you're here so that I know that you're present. That'd be great. Otherwise, I'm talking to the airwaves and to myself, which is fine too. Okay, it's all right. Can you hear me? That's the other question. Hopefully my mic is upright. So today it's known as Palm Sunday or Passion Sunday, depending on your Christian tradition. And so I went to the lectionary readings. Lectionary is the collection of readings that Christians use globally to pick a collective of readings for each Sunday. So I went to them, and I'm always looking for spirituality deep within the scriptures themselves. I'm always trying to find the hidden meaning. And today I've got a little, hey, Wendy Fontaine, thanks for chiming in there. I appreciate that. And you can hear me. Excellent. Thanks. Hi, Ruth. So today I went to the lectionary readings, and there were two that stood out for me. And the first one, and it's only a little tiny bit of each one. The first one is from Isaiah 50, and it says, God has given me the tongue of a teacher that I may know how to sustain the weary with a word. Morning by morning, God awakens, and here's the key part, awakens my ear to listen, ear, singular, awakens my ear to listen as those who are taught. Morning by morning, God awakens my ear to listen as those who are taught. It goes on the next verse. God has opened my ear. God opened the ear. Remember, it's a singular ear. God opened the ear, and I was not rebellious. I didn't get in the way. I let my ego get out of the way and let the voice of God, which is soundless often enough, speak to the ear of my soul. I did not turn backward. I didn't back away. I didn't turn my back to God. I turned my face to God. I turned, as Jesus was talking about, make your eye single and your body will be filled with light. This is kind of what he's talking about. You make your eye single inside yourself in order to eliminate that which is rebellious, that which turns its back to God, which is the ego self. So, skipping over the ear of the soul, are you going to be playing Erythra? I could. I should. But, whenever I play stuff over the speakers, it gets feedback. And Tim, I was actually going to run my outside microphone today so that could all listen to the birds that are lively outside my studio, but there was so much feedback in here that I couldn't do it. So I'll probably play that later. Thanks, Tim, my buddy Tim from way down in Connecticut. Hey, Stephanie. So the other thing is I was reading in Philippians 2, verse 5. It says, and I'm going to do a little translating for you on this in a minute. It says, let the same mind, let that word hang there. Let the same mind be be in you that was in Christ Jesus. So first off, notice that Christ is not Jesus's last name. He isn't Jesus Christ. He's the Christ light. That's really how he should be thought about, because the light comes first, the body comes second. So I'm going to do a little translating here. And if you're joining us this morning and you haven't let me know that you're here, please do, because it's really great to know that folks are here. And we'll be talking about what's on your mind in a few minutes once I get through this stuff here. So I went to Strong's Lexicon, and Strong's Lexicon is a Greek translation, word by word, with the definitions of each word, Strong's Lexicon. And this is what it says. For that sentence, let the mind of Christ, let the same mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus. I'm just going to give you the word by word, like I'm an announcer in a stadium announcing baseball, which is not playing right now. So it says, phronate. That's the first word, phronate. It says, think, direct the mind to seek for, observe, care about. Listen to those. The direct the mind to seek for, care, observe, direct them, seek for. That's the last one. Care of mind, seek for, observe, I care for. Direct the mind. I know I'm repeating myself there because this all has to do with meditation. You direct the mind to seek for, you direct the heart to seek for, you then observe rather than trying to create, although we all are creators. We're trying to observe the presence of God, the presence of the mind of Christ, and to care about it with your heart. So the next word, tauto, observe this, tauto. Observe this in, on, among, at rest, in relation to at rest. So as we observe the mind of Christ, we are at rest, observing the mind of Christ. You, it says, hemen, and that's just the singular. You do this. Ho, and the translation is who, which, what, that. Observe the mind of Christ that is in you, which, namely, Kai, is in relation to rest. That's another N. The anointed one, the Christos, the light itself. Basically, the sentence is saying, you observe the mind of Christ within you. That's really, hey, Jeff, Cherie, Robert, Emmett, Jean, Dawn. Hey, thanks for everybody showing up this morning. We're talking about the couple of sentences out of today's readings that are going to be read on Zoom in churches all over America today. And I only picked out two sentences because I'm always trying to plumb the deeper depths of the meaning of where I see the light pouring through the Bible. And the first sentence that we picked was Isaiah 50, verse 4 and 5. And that has to do with the singular ear. So here's the thing about that sentence, is that Isaiah doesn't say he's listening to God with his two ears. Isaiah is saying he's listening to God with his single ear. So one of the things that happened to me when I was dead is that all of my senses became one. My eye was my ear was my mind, my love was my heart, and my heart was my mind, which was my ear, which was my eye. All these things were one thing. There was no, at the end of one of these readings today, it says every knee in heaven shall bend at the name of Jesus. Well, I didn't have any knees. I didn't have any body whatsoever when I was dead. But I did bend to the light. I was in absorption and in adoration, metaphorically bending a knee to the light itself when I was dead. And when I came back, okay, and there's the point here. When I came back, I came to understand that the ear of my soul was the same as the eye of my soul. I came back to understand that because that was self-evident to me. The mind, the eye, the heart, the love, the radiance, the feeling of the energy of another, the seeing of the light inside someone, the seeing of the aura around someone, the turning the eye inward to look at the holy, turning the ear inward to listen to the holy. That's all one process. That's all one thing. That's all. That's how we access the mind of Christ here, the Christ consciousness. The mind of Christ be in you is what this is saying. And how do we do that? Well, first we can ask for it to be there, and ask and ask and ask and ask and ask, which is basically what meditation does. It asks again and again and again and again, 10,000 times to open the gate, to listen with the ear, to look with the eye, to let the mind of God, the mind of Christ, the consciousness of Christ, to enter into us. And that's really what the whole process is about. And I know that I keep harping on meditation. You can have, I've got a buddy who is super, super smart, got advanced degrees and all sorts of things theological, never had to study because he's got this kind of brain that just absorbs everything. Um, the knowledge that you have is helpful in terms of understanding. He has a really good understanding. But the truth of it is that without an open heart that's developed through meditation and prayer and asking over and over and listening instead of speaking, looking instead of, well, throw that metaphor out. That didn't quite swing through. Um, that's the point of meditation. That's the point of a prayer life, is that the interior world is much larger than the exterior world. And if you want strength in this time of great human turmoil and anxiety, like globally, everybody's feeling the same thing. Everybody all over the world is in the same boat for the first time on the same planet, experiencing the same catastrophe at the same time. So there's a lot of anxiety energy floating around the planet right now. And so as we individually seek to find the mind of Christ inside ourselves by listening and by centering and by spending some time in our life, 10 minutes, 20 minutes in a prayer life, you'll find that you open up, the channel opens up, and the peace sits inside you. As it says, I'm pointing at my screen over here, as it says in Philippians, at rest, at rest in the Spirit, at rest in Christ. Hey, Mike. Hey, anybody else who showed up this morning, if you throw your name up here, that'd be great. I could say hi to you and I'd know that you're here. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about this morning. And tomorrow morning, I'll be here. I don't know. Tell me what time is good. I'm guessing 8 is good. I like to start meditation early in my day. So if I wait till 9 Eastern Standard Time, it's a little late for my work day. So I'll be here at around 8 tomorrow morning to meditate with anybody who wants to show up. So that's my spiritual Sunday spiel. Anybody have anything they want to say or ask this morning? I'll hang out here for a few minutes. And if no one has anything they want to talk about, I'm going to go back to my reconstruction job and try to stop the leak that's coming off the roof that rotted out my dryer vent, all the shingles around my dryer vent that tipped the dryer vent, that broke, that poured water into the house on the floor. So even though it's a leak, all the work's outside. Yesterday, I stripped the whole thing down, cleaned it all up. Today I got a shingle and put the vent back in. So that's out there waiting for me. Anybody have anything they want to say this morning? I'm happy to stay here for a while because, hey, Cynthia, you're welcome. I'm happy to stay here for a while and talk to everybody. In the meanwhile, I'll show you my new rig that I set up. This is my radio mic that I got from Daily Devotions. I inherited this mic. It's like a 40-year-old Electrovox PL20. It's this really great mic, and it's got the suspension in it that First Radio bought. It's like a very nice suspension. I put it on a stone. There's a stone weight here. There's a stone weight here. Maybe you couldn't even hear me because I wasn't talking to the mic. I was just showing you the mic with the stone and my new rig. I'm really glad. I'm really happy with this. My new rig. I can move my mic around on my table. So no comments or questions here this morning. Anybody? Things you want to talk about? Anything on your mind? One of the things I'm thinking about is the spirituality of individuals in this time of struggle. Um, so yesterday I went out to Lowe's to buy parts for. Hi Ruth, you're welcome. I went out to Lowe's all the way to Brunswick. I haven't been off the peninsula. I haven't been off the point where I live in weeks, 2 3 weeks. But this job, this leak, I had to go to Lowe's in Brunswick to get parts that I needed wood. And so I wore a mask and I wore gloves. And probably a third of the people were wearing masks. And I know that there's a big debate about, does it prevent the spread from you to someone else, or does it just prevent the spread from someone else to you? Either way works for me. Back to work, Jeff. Have a good work day. Um, Either way works for me. I've got my gloves on because it was freaking cold in here this morning. I should take them off now because it's pretty warm now. Um, so, oh, what did I do? Stay on this page. There we go. Stay on this page. Cheapers creepers. Hey, so anyway, do you have anything you want to talk about? Otherwise, I'm going to head back to work. Anyone? Bueller? Anyone? Okay, my friends. It was good to see you all. Oh, wait a minute. I'm so glad to see that you're good. Miss you on TV. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, that was a really good gig. I was blessed and grateful to be able to be, well, to have the opportunity to do that for so long. I loved doing it. I enjoyed the writing. I enjoyed the people at Channel 6 where I taped it, and I enjoyed having the opportunity to spread the word of the light to as many people as I possibly could in the world through the medium of television. And it was a great gig, and I'm glad to have had the chance to do it and been the kind of the spiritual pastor of the state of Maine. Um, you're welcome, Gene. Hey, Krista, where are you at these days? I know you're not in the point. Um, so I guess thanks for the good luck with my repair. I shingled it. I shingled this part of the house when we built this section, this addition to the house, and there's like these two roofs that hip together and pour this water down like buckets right down this 1 foot wide chute. I think I need a gutter. That's the next thing. Anyway, Peter, I had a Facebook exchange with my family yesterday that was hurtful and upsetting about this virus. I'd love your input, says Cynthia. What happened? You can, if you can feel that you can share that, and then we can talk about it. Cherie, good luck on your project, Peter. Be safe. Thanks for your time. Thank you, Cherie. Sorry not to catch you out there in Salt Lake City. Hey, Laura. If you want to know what we're talking about, Laura, what we talked about this morning spiritually, you're going to have to rewind at some point to get back to the little lesson of the day. But right now, Cynthia was asking a question. She had a Facebook exchange with her family that was hurtful and upsetting about this virus. You know, not knowing what you talked about, Cynthia, I tend not to talk about things that upset and hurt people, only because if I have an opinion, a political opinion, or any sort of controversial opinion in terms of my ministry, okay, I find that people shut their doors on me if I talk about my opinion on things, and so I try to not focus on that, um, publicly, especially. Privately, that's another story, but publicly, I try not to push people's buttons very often because I find it isolating. I'd rather keep people in my camp so that they can hear about the light, than worry so much about the things of the world. Um, so, for instance, all those folks out there in Arkansas who aren't self isolating, they're out partying on the streets or shopping, whatever they're doing. And so I read in the paper, um, the metaphorical paper, because it was online. Uh, that's up to them. They're out there doing that. They're out there doing that, and if people are out and they're getting sick, they're going to suffer the consequences. And so I take care of myself in terms of my protecting my health as best I can. let other people make the choices on their own and suffer the consequences of whatever happens. So back to Cynthia before I talk to Robert. Hey, Robert. My husband's cousin was complaining about business shutting down and asked which of his family members he would sacrifice for the economy. Well, that's a good question, Cynthia. Um, you know, that's a good question. This is awful for all of us globally. It's not just America that's suffering this economic downturn. It's if you read the BBC, you see that everyone all over the world is in deep, dare I say, shit. Um, they are. We are as a group, and global economy is in great suffering. And you know, I don't want to sacrifice myself for the economy. My daughter's out there working in healthcare. I'm glad I went to our downtown Grover's hardware store yesterday, and I was thankful that those guys were there. I was really thankful. They were wearing gloves. Some people were wearing masks in there. Uh, I do think that there's such a thing as individual responsibility, but I also think that there's such a thing as herd mentality. Communitarianism is what kept people alive during the Spanish flu. Really, that's why some cities that locked down early and shut everything off had a quicker economic recovery than those cities that did not. Philadelphia fell far behind, and St. Louis recovered faster. It hurt in the short term. It's like ripping off the bandage. Don't pull my band-aid off slowly with the hair caught and the adhesive. Just rip the thing off. That's kind of how I prefer things in my life. Um, I don't know what to say, Cynthia. The comment asked him to use his heart to be compassionate. Well, you can't make people be compassionate. You can't make people love. That's the purpose of the light. That's what we're all talking about, is you can't really change a person. The God changes a person. God brings the light, and God's all about changing a person from the darkness to the light. And so compassion is something that rises up from within. You can learn it in a circumstance as you're presented with it in, say, for instance, a tragic event, and you dive in and you help and you discover how good it feels to help. But you can't really, what's that old saying? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. That's kind of where that's at. I'm sorry that you had trouble with your family. You could apologize and kind of mend that over a little bit and not have to change your mind because you're sorry that you hurt them, but you're not sorry that you hold the opinion that you have. Do you think this pandemic, says Robert, will lead to a spiritual awakening? Hey, I hope so, Robert. So my secret inner life is this. My thoughts is that the whole near-death experience thing that's been going on for 50 years with science raising the dead globally and in tandem with social media, there's a whole lot of people who now understand that love is the thing, and we're all talking about it publicly, which gives everybody else who's had a spiritual experience of their heart the permission to talk about it publicly too, just like we're doing here in this little tiny group. um, yeah, I think there's potential to have a spiritual awakening, and maybe it's not the big one, okay? Maybe it's more like the spiritual awakening that New York City had after 9/11, when racism disappeared in New York. And I lived in New Haven in the 80s, and I was in New York a fair amount, and it was a dangerous, dirty, nasty city. And then in the 90s, I started going down to the city again, working with Odyssey Network with daily devotions, and so I was in New York a lot for about a decade again. And there was this huge difference. There was no more racism in the city, at least initially. And here it is 20 years later, and there's been a cultural tweak in New York City. See how they hang together as a city? They really hang together as a city. They're all in this together. And so if at a minimum in this global catastrophe, we can hang together, 20 years down the road, we can have a cultural shift that hangs us together, one planet, one people. That'd be awesome. Uh, uh, that's in terms of the practicality of it. But in terms of the spirituality of it, that's ongoing. That movement's been underway for 50 years. And now we're reaching the next stage of that movement. And you're all participating in it, as I am too. So, yeah, I think there's a global spiritual awakening that was happening before the pandemic. And the pandemic will help. which is a terrible thing to say. I realize that. Um, let's see. I'm going to go back to the list over here and put my glasses on if I can find them so I can see what the heck they're saying. All right. The Emmett. Anything to say about the increasing anxiety during this? Yeah, meditation, meditation, meditation. Emmett, that's really eh, that's how I control my anxiety. It's how I control my well, that's it. I control my anxiety through meditation, and it's an accumulation of it. It's a practice of meditation. 10 minutes, 20 minutes a day, as it says in Philippians today, be at rest in the mind of Christ, as we were talking about earlier. And if you want to understand what we were talking about, skip back to the beginning and take a listen. Yes, you can adjust your inner world through the practice of meditation and reduce your anxiety through the repetition of your prayer word in a focused mental situation of concentration, and then be able to use that same word, which runs in the tape loop in the back of your head, if you say it enough, in other situations. So yesterday, for instance, I went out for a walk and I had a song running in my head, and I liked this song, and so I was singing it in my head and singing it and singing it, and I was like, wait a minute, this thing's an earworm. How do I get rid of this? I began to chant my longer prayer, and first, my mind rebelled against me, didn't want to do that. But after a while of walking and chanting at the same time, pretty soon my prayer eliminated that thought. And that's the power of the daily practice of meditation. You can use it during your waking hours, your non meditating hours, in order to control your own thoughts. And peace is a result of the practice of meditation, inner peace. Chris Miller, this is written in the Bible. Is this part of the end times? Now, see that whole end times thing. it- so think about that sentence. Is this the end of time? The universe is 13 billion years old. Time is not going to end. Time is not going to end. Um, it might end for humanity at some point. You know, Homo sapiens are a mix of all these other hominids, and we're just an animal on the planet with intelligence and opposing thumbs, with self-reflection and the capacity to pass knowledge down from generation to generation. um, we may end up with a huge cultural change. Humanity will survive, but I don't think the end times in the Bible. So here's the thing about that: the Book of Revelation. John of Patmos, who wrote this, he it was a controversial book to add in, and Martin Luther said you should not have added that book into the Bible because, well, because it's really about, it's not about the end times. It's about Rome. It's a historically rooted piece about the Roman Empire and the nastiness of their oppression on the people of the time. And maybe John was tripping or who knows, or he had a vision of the four angel horsemen coming down with death and pestilence. Geez, that happens all the time. You know, the we there's been a locusts in Africa, fires in Australia, the global climate change, oceans rising, hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes ripping through the nation and houses. It's always been terrible. And it's always been terrible on the planet. There's always been bad things on the planet. Um, anyway, so there we have that right there. I don't think it's the end times, but we're going to go through a big cultural change. And the thing about religion, okay, we have all these creation stories. We get the Muslim creation story and the Jewish creation story, which is the Christian creation story, but the Christians throw another twist into it. And you get the Native American stories and the Zoroastrian stories, and everyone's got a creation story. One of the great things about cataclysms is that it's a time for mythologies, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, to shift. So the story we tell ourselves about who we are as a planet, as one people suffering this great fear and anxiety of a global pandemic, uh, it's it's an opportunity for the cultural story we tell ourselves about who we are to change. So we could change the story to, we are one humanity and love matters most. We can do that. We can change that. And that begins with every individual who's participating in their spiritual life on a daily basis before this happened, to bring that to the forefront now. to bring that to the daily living. And sure, we make mistakes and we get in arguments with our cousins and or brothers-in-law, or on the street. But if we cultivate an attitude of the mind of Christ inside us, to get back to Philippians, if we cultivate an attitude of peace and rest inside us on a daily basis, we carry that into the world. We change the world by being in the world. We bring more light into the world by listening with our ear, as Isaiah was saying. Listen with the ear of the soul. Dun, 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 dun. You did, Cynthia. Good for you. And you told him that you loved him. What more can you want? What more can he want than that? That's the tool that I use all the time when I hurt people. I'm sorry. I love you. That's it. Or I love you or forgive you. It's the other side of the same thing. When people are fearful, they often aren't thinking straight, says Wanda. Oh yeah, for sure. And so how do you continue to think straight? You take time away from your own mind and you allow space inside yourself for the holy to enter in. You keep yourself calm. You know, in times of panic, the calm person has the advantage. The thinking person has the advantage. And we can train our minds to stop, look, listen, and think. Meditation, sorry to go back to that again, does that. Yeah, people get misinformed too. I mean, there's so much knowledge going around and misinformation about the coronavirus, partly because we just don't know, and partly because people are swinging it to their political point of view. But I think that's a minimal. Scientists don't give a hoot about the politics of this. What they're interested in is the truth of it. So I tend to listen to the scientists. I read the scientific articles, and I trust the guy who's Fauci, because he's not about politics. He's telling it as straight as he can tell it. Um, Happy Palm Sunday to you too, Chris. Um, Robert, you're very inspiring. Thank you for what you do. I'm praying for a spiritual awakening. Awakening. I should slow down and speak with enunciation. I am praying for a spiritual awakening. Yeah, we are. I'm glad to hear you are. It would be great. Have you ever read Robert Heinlein's book? What the heck was the name of that? Childhood's End. It's a science fiction book about it's a science fiction book novel about the awakening of the planet. It's cool. Like I love this guy as a writer, and I like it as literature, and I like the idea of it. I'm praying for a spiritual awakening. So when you pray for others, you pray for yourself at the same time. So if you're praying for a spiritual awakening for the planet, that comes back to rest on you. It's like Jesus says, you know, when you go into a house and you offer them peace, something like this. If they don't accept the peace, it comes back to you. Well, if you offer them peace, it comes back to you anyway. So because it always comes back to you. So that's, you pray for others, pray for a spiritual awakening for the whole planet. You participate in that too. And when you seek it yourself, inside yourself, for yourself, you seek the mind of Christ inside you, the Christ consciousness, as it's called, at rest, as it says in Philippians, first at verse, what am I talking about? 5. Then you bring more of that into the world. You bring that spiritual awakening into the world. And the more of us that do that on an individual basis, the larger the aura becomes. So or halo, have you ever, if for those of you who've been to the International Association of Near-Death Studies, International Association for Near-Death Studies annual conference, it's like walking into this huge bubble of spiritual awakenedness. Each individual has this in them. All the near-death experiencers have this radiance in them to larger and smaller degrees. And when we're all there as a collective, it's like this huge bubble. Now, that's true for every single person who has the divine light inside them. Every single person has this radiance that comes out of them, this aura that shines around them, this energy that comes out from them. And as a planetary collective, the more people that carry this light, the more likely we are to have a spiritual awakening. And so the more we listen with the ear of our soul, as Isaiah says, make our eyes single and our body will be filled with light, as Jesus says. the more likely we are to bring more. No, that's wrong. When we do that, we bring more of the light in. That's just a de facto. All we do is have to get out of the way and let the light come through us. That's how the awakening happens. Let's see who else. Tori, hi Tori. Hey Lindsay, Eric, Lois. Hey Lois. Spiritual awakening sounds awesome to me, and yes, we are all one. It's would be about time, maybe this cataclysm, this pandemic cataclysm, in concert with the ongoing super quiet spiritual awakening that's been going on for 50 years, because science has been freaking raising the dead for 50 years globally, and we're talking about it over social media now for the first time, uniting the planet. Whether we're Jews or Zoroastrians or Sikhs or Muslims or Christians or atheists, anyone who has one of these experiences now has had this magical, mystical uplifting that changes perspective, and we're talking about it, which gives permission for everyone else who's had a mystical experience and not talked about it because they're afraid because it's kooky, has permission to talk about it, which is what we're doing right here, which is what advertisement time, promotion and marketing, which is about what my third book is about. And I just finished writing my reproposal of my book, 55 pages, single spaced, just for the friggin' proposal. I'm hunting up a new literary agent, and have some help with that. I parted ways intentionally with my last literary agent. So my third book's coming out at some point in the next year. Wanda, wasn't that Arthur C. Clarke? Who did I say it was? You're right. You're right. It's Arthur C. Clarke. Who did I say? Oh, Robert Heinlein, I said. No. I'm totally wrong. Wanda's right. It's Arthur C. Clarke. Too many years have passed. And yes, what a lovely twist ending. It's a beautiful thing. Arthur C. Clarke, Childhood's End. Thanks, Wanda. Anyway, hi Mike. Mike, where are you? Are you in San Paulo, Brazil? And Tracy, hi Tracy, who lives up the road from me, and Carol, who lives not so far from me either. So, any other comments or questions? I got that construction job waiting for me outside. Want to continue talking if you want to continue talking, but if we're done chit-chatting, I'll go back to pounding nails and shingles as I reshingle the outside of this section of the house today. Anybody? Anyone? Hey, Shelby. So for those of you who've just joined and you missed the beginning, you can always spin back to where we began this morning, 38 minutes ago, 36 minutes ago, and we can talk it over later. You can make a comment. I know that, so I get some angry faces sometimes, and I think it's because I'm a heretic. Can't help it. Mystics are heretics. We don't follow the rules very well. I get a lot of angry faces over on my. Hey Brian, James, how you doing, brother? I get a lot of pushback from fundamentalist, literalist Christians over there on my YouTube channel. I delete them, believe it or not. I delete them and block them. I don't need that kind of thing in my life. Hey, looking forward to having lunch again, Brian. I would love that. It's been way freaking too long. And Wanda, thanks. I will go have fun. Hey Jane, I'm about to sign off, Jane. I wish you could swing back to the beginning and follow the conversation as a recording, and then when you get to the end or at some point, if you have any comment, make it, and I'll come back and talk. So anyway, I'm gonna say I'll see you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern time for a meditation of about 20 minutes or so, half an hour. Figure a half an hour altogether, and we can bring a little more awakenedness into the world. Kayla, good. You should totally delete them. Thank you, Kayla. I do. I read them and then I delete them because there's no point in talking to them if there's just no point in talking to them. Their minds are calcified, and their hearts might not be. That's not to say that their hearts aren't illuminated. You can have an illuminated heart and a calcified mind at the same time. I don't condemn these people. I don't think that they're going to hell. I think they're going to heaven just like the rest of us. Don, are angry faces from dogma versus spirituality? Hey, yeah, I think so. I think you're right, Don. I think it's dogma, doctrine versus spirituality and mysticism. I think those, that's why the mystics were kind of kept apart from the people in Western Europe from, well, through the church. They were dangerous to the doctrine and the dogma. But if you read the literature, there's this one great book handed down 14th century called The Cloud of Unknowing by Anonymous, that is a incredibly accurate book about the practice of and experience of mysticism. But it was so dangerous that it was illegal to own this book for centuries, and it was handed down person to person. From the 14th century, it's still in print today, and now it's not illegal to own this book. So spirituality versus dogma and doctrine, yeah, all it's people are upset about that, which is why I'm considered a heretic by so many people. And that's fine. I don't care. They're going to find out when they die. They'll be like, oh, God is love. Oh, God does accept everybody. God loves everybody. Oh, huh. And they'll be forgiven. So it's totally cool. Um, but also, mystics are disruptive. They disrupt the social and political order and doctrine and dogma of the church. And that's why they used to kill them, burn them at the stake, stone them to death. And I don't mean with legal cannabis. No, I'm talking about picking up rocks and pitching them at them until they died. So, anyway, yeah, at least they don't do that anymore. At least all they do is put up angry faces. So I'm okay with that. Anybody else, anything else they want to say before I say fare thee well, where thee may fare, and go back out to my construction job? So I'll sign off by saying that I just got a notification from the Wild Goose Festival, which you might want to look up if you have an interest in progressive Christianity, where they are beginning to accept mystics because they let me speak there this year, first time. So Wild Goose Festival tickets go on sale today. I think it's in North Carolina this year. If everybody's healthy and well, I'll be there speaking. And in the meanwhile, I will say peace, Jah love, Jah Rastafari. God is oneness of being. Love, love, love. God in many of us loves a good heretic. Have a great day. Thanks, Ellen. Yeah, God loves the heretics. I think that's going to be my new motto or something. I'll work that phrase around. God loves even the heretics. Thanks, Robert. All right, I'm going to say farewell, and I'm going to load this up in a second so y'all can watch it if I can remember how to end this thing, which I always seem to have trouble doing. Close that. Where's the ending? How do I do that? Like view live? Not quite sure. It's a troubling thing. I guess I'm off. Am I off? I think I am. I might still be on. Am I? No, I don't think so.